Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for this LiveSeeding webinar, which is the third in a series that we're running throughout the project of LiveSeeding, which runs until 2026, all about organic heterogeneous material, so genetically diverse plant population. We've got a great panel of speakers here today. We're going to have a series of presentations, and then we'll go into breakout rooms to discuss some of the challenges that are being faced by us all that are working with plant populations, heterogeneous material, organic heterogeneous material in different countries in the EU and in other countries like the UK. So this can be ranging from different perspectives. We've had a lot of focus on the legislation, but as we try and implement this legislation, there are different challenges that we are facing to do with seed certification, development of markets, different approaches to how you register plant populations. And we are also facing a dynamic and changing policy environment. So we have a really good presentation to come from Ilsa Phillips from iFoam EU to update us on the current policy situation. iFoam Organics Europe are the umbrella organisation for organic food and farming in Europe, and they are part of the LiveSeeding project to look at EU policymaking processes all around the topic of seeds and breeding in organic farming. We'll then have a presentation from Odette at University of Kassel. We've got Diego Guidotti he's developing a traceability tool within the LiveSeeding project for organic heterogeneous material. And then finally, we've got Sebastian Kussmann, and I'll do full introductions before their presentation. But yeah, just to give you a bit of context while we're listening to the presentations, in the discussion, we'd really like to share with one another the challenges that we're facing so that we can start to brainstorm about how we might approach these, communicating these to policymakers, but also learn from one another about things like developing markets, implementing the policy, and development of new populations, what we need from them, what have learned from our experiences so far. So yes, just to emphasize for those that have joined, we are recording, so if you don't want to be in the recording, please keep your camera switched off. But yeah, ask questions throughout the presentations on the chat, and there'll be 5 minutes after each presentation for us to have a brief discussion Q&A with the speaker. Okay, I think that's everything. Without further ado, I'll pass over to Ilsa. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Hi, everyone. I'll start sharing my screen. Okay, hi, everyone. So my name is Ilsa Phillips. I work at iFoam Organics Europe, and together with FIBO Germany, we lead the work package 4 in the LiveSeeding project, which is about organic seed market transparency and also policies. So today I will give a few updates on the state of negotiations on the PRM legislation, the plant reproductive material, and also one slide on the updates on the NGT proposal. So why is there a reform of reproductive material proposed? One of the main reasons is that the rules are quite old, they're outdated. They are since the 60s, but also because there are many different directives for all the different crop groups. So I believe there are maybe 12 different directives at the moment. So the EU wants to make one single regulation to replace all these directives. And the intentions of this legislation are to have PRM of high quality, diversity of choice, also that they could be adapted to climatic conditions in the future. So yeah, a long list of intentions, so contribute to food security, protection of biodiversity, etc. So these are the intentions of the proposal. But how is this relevant for the organic sector? So of course there is topics such as market access for organic or conservation varieties in there, in the PRM for end users, or the conservation by gene banks, organizations, or conservation networks, exchange between farmers. So these are all important topics, of course. And what is then actually happening currently at EU level? So there's work in progress at the 3 institutions, where first the legislation was proposed by the European Commission last year in July, together with the NGT proposal. And I think in the last OHM workshop, we went a bit deeper into the Commission's proposal. So and I think it's also on YouTube. So if you want to look back into that, then you can. But for now, I will go more into the position of the European Parliament, that they voted on the text in the plenary session last week. So I will go a bit into detail what they have been voted on and on what the Parliament's position is. Of course, then you also have the Council's position. So this is not anything final yet, but just to give what the Parliament decided now as adopted text. So one really positive thing I would say is that the proposal to adapt the organic regulation has been deleted, as you can see in the text here. So this means that also OHM stays in the organic regulation as it is now. So it will not be adapted. What it also means is that for a heterogeneous material that is in the text now, so not OHM but HM, should be allowed to be produced and marketed, but with the exception of fodder plants. This is an exception that is not in place in the OHM regulation. So this is something different. What is also for HM amended is that it should not be containing GMO or NGT, and also it should be free of charge to notify the HM material. Some other things that the Parliament's position is that there is no mandatory VSU testing for fruit and vegetables, so that it's voluntary. That's also a positive outcome as a position from the Parliament. Also, farmers' right to exchange small quantities of their own material with each other or for monetary compensation. Something more negative is that there are more restricted rules for the transfer of conservation varieties, where only established conservation organizations are allowed to use the derogation. So that's a negative point, let's say, from our point of view. And then that's the position of the Parliament. And then, of course, there's also work on this file from the Council. This is a bit less transparent. So with the Parliament, you have all the documents and you can follow everything. From the Council, that's less transparent. So what we know is that they will meet again in June. And what is also very important is to take into account that whatever the Parliament's position is now, all the progress, let's say, that's been made, might still be changed during the trilogue negotiations with the Council. So everything just said now is not at all the final legislation. So what you can see here is the timeline. For the Parliament, they have voted, but for the Council, it will probably only start with the trilogue negotiations until the end of this year, because there's the EU elections, etc. And then maybe if I'm not very up to date about the NGT file, but I can give some updates. So this file has been dealt with even relatively fast. So the Parliament already reached a position in February, which was endorsed again last week in the last plenary. And that's in the Parliament, and in the Council, they have not reached an agreement yet because there's major concerns on coexistence with organic or traceability, risk assessment, and of course also the issue of patents. So it's to be seen how the next presidency will advance on the file in the European Council and in the final trilogue negotiations. I think those are all my slides. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I think
Thanks,
also
Ilsa.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, over to Odette. So thanks for joining us, Odette, from the University of Kassel. You've been working with heterogeneous material plant populations, OHM, for some time now in terms of studying agronomic factors. But today you're going to tell us some more about your work, about how the breeding and this agricultural innovation can be adopted more widely within farmer networks and also the value chains associated with that, so market development of markets. So look forward to hearing more. Over to you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm just going to share my screen quickly, and then we can... it should be in full screen now. All right. I'm sitting here on behalf of a lot of other colleagues as well, so I'm not alone in this boat. And today I'm going to talk about the integration of heterogeneous wheat populations into organic value chains. It was a German-funded project called Backwert that ran from 2020 to 2023. And I'm just going to start with the background, how we developed the project and why. You should see in front of you the results of semi-structured interviews that we carried out with farmers, breeders, and processors. It's in German. You shouldn't look at all the details, but really what I wanted to show with this slide is that heterogeneous populations are complex. And that there's a number of core issues that include the potential conflicts between actor groups, inconsistencies as to the message, what are the advantages of heterogeneous populations, and one of the core issues, which is uncertainties, particularly market skepticism, what this heterogeneous nature of populations means for processors, and obviously skepticism from farmers. So the main aims of our project was to develop organic value chains for heterogeneous winter wheat populations. That was our main focus, which meant for us the value chain was working with farmers, with millers, and then bakers. And it was the integration and collaboration between these actors to solve the problems of potential heterogeneity within the populations in the form of a living lab. We tested the populations on farm in 2 experimental seasons. That's 2020 and 2021, and 21 and 22. What we looked at is of the population's quality analysis. We looked at milling optimization, and also we had a number of baking trials. The culmination of all the results of the project is a cultivation and processing recommendation handbook, which can be downloaded from our website, weizenvielfalt.de, or it's available under www.backwert.de. We also had baking campaigns. We worked with bakers. So during the project, there were 2 baking campaigns for after the harvest, and that was also followed by a dedicated website to try to explain to consumers what heterogeneous populations are. Just to give you an idea as to what our value chains were and where they were situated, we basically had a northern cluster, a middle cluster in mid-Germany or middle Germany, and then a southern cluster in southern Germany. In total, we had 9 organic farmers, we had 3 millers, and then we had 13 organic bakers that were included in the project. Just for the results that I'll show you now, I've coded the farms, basically from farms A to I, just so that you have an indication as to the coding that I've used for the results that follow. So within the project, basically what we did is we compared 2 heterogeneous populations to a reference variety. This is the reference variety Achestafel. It's a high baking quality variety with generally known for average and stable yields. It's actually the variety which is used as a reference variety in the variety trials in Germany as a reference to populations, which is the reason that we also included it on farm, so that we could use data from the varietal trials, but then also obviously the on-farm data. We had the Brandex population. This is a very high baking quality population that also achieves good yields. And we compared this. So this was the first population, and the second population was what we call in Germany the equality population, but many of you will know it as the Wakelands YQ population. The Wakelands YQ population is a very diverse cross population of 20 parents that include both high yielding but also high quality parents. So those were the two populations, Brandex and equality, against the reference variety Argestaro. So just to come to our research questions and the methodologies that we used, basically we wanted to compare the two populations and the line variety in terms of agronomic performance and baking quality. We also looked at yield and baking quality stability. In terms of the on-farm experiments, farmers were asked to grow a minimum of almost a half a hectare per variety or per population in the same field. So all three end treatments next to each other of a minimum of a half a hectare, because we obviously needed the yield at the end of the season for the bakers. What we did during the season was an evaluation of foliar diseases and pathogen identification. Just before harvest, we had biomass cuts to be able to look at yield and yield parameters. We looked at different baking quality parameters. That was 9 samples per population or reference variety per farm, and looking at protein and gluten content, sedimentation value, and the falling number. And then in the results here, I'm just going to present 2 stability parameters. The one is environmental variance, and the second one is ecovalence. So just staying on stability measurements or parameters for the moment, because I'm not sure that it's clear for everybody what these different parameters mean. I've got an example of a static and a dynamic stability concept here, environmental variance being a static stability parameter and ecovalence a dynamic stability parameter. So what do I mean by these 2 parameters? If you look on the x-axis, what you'll see here is the yield potential of the location. It means how much yield can we expect from a certain environment or from a location. And on the y-axis, what I have here is the mean yield achieved by the entry. So if we look at environmental variance, what we often find are varieties that tend to achieve the same yield irrelevant of the environment where they find themselves. So that would be a measurement of how variable the yield is over a number of different environments. And this seems quite good, but only if it's at a much higher level. Generally, what we find is varieties that are statically stable may have lower yields. And what we have here as a measure of ecovalence dynamic stability is a variety that is able to increase or improve its yields based on the yield potential of the location. So one would always think, okay, well, if I was a farmer, then ecovalence seems much more reliable and valuable as a stability measurement. But then sometimes we have situations like this where we know we have a very low yield potential of a specific location. And in times like this or environments like this, it's very valuable to know if there's a variety that's very stable and may achieve higher yields or more stable yields, for example, than a variety that's known for highest dynamic stability. So just with this in mind for the interpretation of the results that follow. We're going to look at the yield performance and the stability of Argestaro as the reference variety plus the 2 populations. I just want to make a comment about the 2 seasons. 2021 was had very high rainfall in summer. We struggled just before the harvest to get into the fields because it just didn't stop raining. And in 2022, we had very strong drought stress. So we have 2 very contrasting seasons. I'm not going to go deeper into the disease pressure because in both years it was particularly low, and so there's not very much there that's interesting to look at. I've broken down the yields in the 2 years, 2021 and 2022, and what we can see is always that equality achieved the highest yields, followed by Brandex and then Argestaro with the lowest yields. And this is seen again, the average of both seasons. What I've also done is I've taken the average of the varietal trials from 3 different states in Germany, Niedersachsen, Hessen, and Baden-Württemberg. And what we see is that the populations achieved similar or better yields than the yields achieved from the baking quality varieties from these varietal trials. If we look at the stability variables, that's environmental variance and ecovalence, what we see is that Arrestajo in both years and in each year and over both years achieved the highest stability in terms of environmental variance, but that Brandex achieved the best stability in terms of dynamic stability, meaning that it was able to improve its yield based on the potential yield location or the mean yield of the location. This here is just which one way view of the genotype biplot, genotype environment biplot. And what we're seeing here, these are yield sectors. And what we're seeing here is that the highest yields were achieved in 12 environments in total. That was 2 seasons over 9 farms, which being 18 environments in total. Equality with the highest yield in 12 environments, followed by Brandex and Arrestajo, each with 3 environments achieving the best yield. If we look at baking quality and stability, what we see is that basically Arrestajo is the best variety for achieving the highest baking quality, but it's very, very similar to Brandex. For protein, they are similar. This is the average over both years. Wet gluten, there's a slight difference, but still in very, very good, it's at a very high level. The same for sedimentation value and also for falling number. In terms of stability, what we see is that in terms of baking quality, both Brandex and Equality have achieved the highest stability parameters, whether it be static or dynamic. It's just the case in terms of falling number that Arrestajo, as the reference variety, achieved the highest environmental stability. And I think this is quite interesting because it has to do with differential ripening times. And so I think that's something for breeders that one needs to look at in terms of ripening of populations to ensure stability of falling number. One of the questions that we had from a lot of the millers was a skepticism about seed size. They obviously all assume that heterogeneous populations would have very differential seed sizes, and that through seed separation and cleaning, one would start selecting populations in a certain direction because they would have such variable seed classes that one would start, that one would lose a high proportion during seed cleaning of the population. So what we did was we analyzed more than 27,000 seeds to look at seed size and the length and the diameter of the seeds. And what we did was categorize them into different classes, under 2.5 millimeters up to over 4.3 millimeters. And what you can see is in terms of, this is the percentage or the kernel proportion of the different classes, seed size classes. What you can see is that actually between Arrestajo, Brandex, and Equality, we have the same number of categories or classes available. But that Arrestajo, in fact, has a higher proportion of smaller seeds in comparison to the 2 populations. And this is quite interesting to see and was also confirmed by the 1,000 grain weight from the samples, that Brandex and Equality also had a much higher 1,000 grain weight, which corresponded then basically with having a higher proportion of kernels in the larger seed classes. But then after having also spoken to the mills and also the farmers who do a pre-cleaning on farm, there was no differences in the seed cleaning steps or grain separation on farm or within the mill. And these were the results that we also gathered that indicated that actually there's no problem with heterogeneity of seed size in terms of populations. So just a discussion on the agronomic results as a break in the middle. What we find is that both populations achieved higher yields than the reference variety, but the reference variety Arrestajo is known for its average yields, but very good baking quality, which is what we've seen. We had very demanding climatic conditions, especially in the second year, 2022. but that baking quality was good in all 3 varieties, particularly in comparison with the local variety trials. But we had strong differences in the baking quality, and that was depending on the farm where the populations or the reference variety were grown. In terms of yield stability, Aristao showed the strongest or the greatest static stability in terms of environmental variance, but that Brandex had a greater dynamic stability in terms of ecovalence. In terms of baking quality stability, both populations showed the highest stability for the tested parameters, and that the skepticism regarding heterogeneity was unfounded for the tested parameters, particularly for processing. What we did within the project was also 2 baking campaigns, and they're based on the quality of the flour that was delivered from the mill and also what the baker requested. Bakers could bake any products that they wanted to, and a comment from all the bakers was they were not limited in any way as to any recipe that they wanted to use. So really great results from the baking campaign. What we did was also before the baking campaign, we offered schooling for baking staff to be sure that they could explain to customers what populations were, why they were advantageous, and what this was all about. Obviously, we had a number of social media campaigns, which included Instagram. We have a YouTube channel and also the Instagram and Twitter channels from bakers. We also provided marketing material in the form of posters and postcards. We had countless articles in newspapers and magazines, and we had a website just dedicated to the baking campaign, which included also a video about heterogeneous populations. Just to give you an impression of what the baking material looked like, the marketing material, this is a postcard basically that explains with a few key words as to why populations are really interesting in terms of buffering capacity, that they stay stable when everything goes crazy, that it's a bred for inner words, inner values. So with lots of information about why it's interesting, and then obviously a link to the website. But what we found is that obviously it's difficult enough to try to convince the market to buy new products. But what about other practitioners? What about farmers? What about millers? What about bakers? How do we all get them on board to try new agricultural innovations? So what we have here as a core issue is the uncertainties. And this was also really not only market uncertainty, but skepticism among the various stakeholders as to whether the scientific results can be transferred into practice. And so what we did within the project is take a participatory video approach, which is an example of a multi-actor learning process, which is used particularly or specifically to improve adoption of agricultural innovations. It's a participatory method where actors are allowed to tell their own story, and by explaining and discussing the innovations, they can improve acceptance by other actors or other stakeholders. By telling their own story, it also promotes empowerment and brings decision-making back into practice. So this was something that we did within the project. And we wanted to produce a video with actors together, and the target group for the video would be obviously all other stakeholders throughout the value chain, but it should also be accessible to the general public, because we obviously want to tell the general public about these innovations as well. So we held a workshop with interested actors that included farmers, millers, and bakers. And in order to provide a narrative for the film, we used the ABT concept as a central thread through the film script. So the ABT concept is a way to structure a film narrative. It's a concept that stands for A and, B, the but, and T, therefore. So the and summarizes the background and builds the tension. The but introduces the conflict, and the therefore is the resolution of the conflict. And so our storyline, our general storyline for the heterogeneous populations was that wheat is an important, probably the most important bread grain in the world, and an important raw material for regional bakers. But introducing the conflict is that climate change and crises have an increasing impact on local food security. And the answer would therefore be that heterogeneous wheat populations can buffer environmental stress due to their greater genetic diversity. So this was the basic or the ground storyline that we worked with. And then what we did was that we had every actor group telling their own story. So we have the general ABT, which I introduced now in the previous slide, but each actor, the farmer, the miller, and the baker, and also the science, we also have a story to tell. We have our own storyline that also flows through the narrative. So obviously there's, at the beginning of any film, there's setting the scene, and at the end, it's completing the story. But what we tried to do was basically to tell that each actor group, including scientists, was able to tell their story with transitions and feedback in between, particularly because at each stage, we wanted to include some of the results that we have already from the project so that we had scientific interjections with results at each stage of the storytelling. So it's an iterative step between all of these farmers, and particularly for the scientists, because we obviously need to make smooth transitions and connections between all of the actors, but to also be able to integrate the results of the project into the whole story. So this is what we did, and our videos, it resulted in a main film of 24 minutes and 4 short modules for every processing stage in the value chain, each about 2 to 3 minutes. I would be very happy and welcome you all to go onto our Backwert YouTube channel, where you can find these films, and they're translated with subtitles into numerous languages. So you're more than welcome to go and take a look. And that's actually it from my side. I want to thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to the discussion.
Over to you, Diego.
Yes, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yes, good morning. I am Diego Guidotti. I work in LiveSeeding to develop the OHM traceability tools, and also to support interoperability. Interoperability will be very important. I will also show you a few examples how this can be relevant for managing traceability. So the traceability base is to detect during the seed data, the seed exchange, to keep track of all the data. What is the organization involved? What is the amount? Where is the location where the seed is available, and when the seed has been exchanged. So to try to keep track of all of the information. And it is important to, traceability can be done if a set of best practices are adopted at farm level and organization level. So it is important to keep track of the entrance of seed in my organization. I'm using the term organization. It can be farmer, it can be actually a seed exchange organization, gene banks. So it is keep track of the seed exchange. We keep track of the accession code, or the seed code from the organization that give me seed. How do I manage internally the seed? So do I provide the code for my seed lots or for my genetic materials, my OHM? I keep track internally of the seed exchange, when the seed has been planted, harvested, what will be the amount, and so on. And then I keep track of when I give seed to another organization, do I keep track of this? So it is important because not in all organizations all these partners keep track. The idea is to provide tools for organizations that are not managed this in a formal way. Some technology can provide support to do it in an easy way. And for other organizations that already have a system to manage their own internal and external traceability, how can we exchange data with them? So this will be the best part. So during the life cycle of an OHM, there will be different parts. There will be pre-breeding activities, breeding activities. Today, we will focus mainly on notification. So we have an OHM. It is ready to be notified to a country authority. And so I will show you, we have done some analysis of what will be the data needed, and we discuss about how traceability can be, how digital tools can support notification activities. And then the second part will be propagation. So it has been notified, the OHM, it has been propagated, and how to keep track of all of this data. This is a basic request from the regulation, so we will investigate how can be done this, showing a few examples. So we are co-designing several tools in LiveSeeding. We collect information about what will be the main requirement from the user point of view, and facilitating the OHM notification will be the top graded function. So we focus a bit on this. So I show you some preliminary analysis we have collected from 4 different countries: France, Italy, Germany, and UK. What will be the data needed by the notification? They are very similar. I can show you later a comparison of the required data, but they're really similar. There are also some more information about, there will be probably some procedure available in Denmark, Czech Republic, and Slovenia. We are collecting, as soon as we have data, we are collecting the requirements. So the idea is to do a side-by-side comparison between the different countries to assess if there are similarities, if there are differences. The basic information, species, notifier, they will be quite common for all countries. Then information about maintainer. The parental and the breeding scheme adopted, it is a very important information. So we need also to understand how it is what is the best tools to manage this type of data. Then they request information about production tools, location, pedoclimatic condition, phenotypic condition, heterogeneity. So this will be a set of phenotypic description of the OHM, agronomic value, organic condition, per period of production, and the amount of seed to be marketed. This is not be requested by all the form, but as you can see, the form are quite similar. So the idea also within the project is to propose to standardize a bit this procedure, keep tracking also the specific country requirements, but to have a procedure that will be as much as possible homogeneous among different countries. And within the project, we have already testing several software that can be used to support the data collection for notification. There is Shinemas, a software developed by Ra that is already allow you to keep track of all the breeding activities. And OHM Track, that is the tools that we are going to develop, that we are developing, and I show you later a demo. It can be used to keep track of the seed producing information, and is based on Shinemas. So basically, it's just an interface of the most complex Shinemas tools. Then we are testing SeedLinked, that is a web tools that allow you to perform a participatory phenotypic observation on OHM. And then the European router database that is used to provide information about availability of the organic seed database. We are sharing a common vocabulary, so it will be easier also to exchange information. And when there will be a commercial availability OHM track, it will be possible to publish on the European router database. So collecting all of this information, it is things that we are testing now to provide the people that want to notify the new registration, to provide all the information needed, so to generate a report where all the information is needed to facilitate and streamline a bit more the notification activities. Then we are developing OHM Track. So OHM Track is after notification tools to keep track of the seed data exchange and the seed production activity and all the seed production activities. You can access this demo. So this is the address of the website. It is in beta version now, so it is under development, but it has been already tested internally by the project, and it can be useful, and it can be used also by external organization. It's still not 100% stable, but if you want to test it, please do it. And I just request you to give me a feedback so that we keep track of what will be the organization that are using it. And then as soon as there will be new updates, every few months there will be some updates on the software, we can contact you and advise. So the OHM objective is to support breeders, seed producers, and seed traders, and also authorities in traceability of OHM, so exchange of information about all the people that are involved, tries the seed log exchange between different organizations, and also facilitates the notification. OHM track is not a tools for breeding, so I suggest you to use Shinemast to keep track of breeding activities. And to manage field trials, it will be connected with SeedLinked, and to keep track of the organic seed availability, OHM track will communicate to European rooted database. So there will be different software, but OHM track will be able to exchange data with these tools. So this is the current test. So if you want to use it, it is open, it is free, you can use it as you prefer. So this is the main interface. I can show you now quite quickly what will be the steps for using the system. So you can log in, you can use the Google account, or you can register and use your own user ID and password. When you enter, you need to create a new organization. So write the name of your organization and state what will be the main roles. So if you're a breeder, a farmer, a dealer, or an authority, then the first step is to define the location. So the location of seed banks or farmer that are related to your organization. Then you need to create the germplasm. So what will be the name, what is the type? So it is OHM. The system can be used also by organic varieties, not just by OHM, but its main target is OHM. So provide you the name and connect with the species. Then you can create the first seed lot. So choose the location, what will be the genetic material, the date, the quantity, and add the new comments. So with a few steps, you have created your first seed lot, and then you can proceed in entering data about diffusion. So transfer it to seed lot to new location, like when you give the seeds to a farmer that belongs to your organization, or to manage reproduction, so seeding and harvesting of the lot. So you can enter the date, the quantity, the information, and then as you can see, we have moved the seed lots in two different locations. And then we can proceed information and manage information about harvesting and to keep track of what will be the seed availability in different locations, so in farm, in warehouses, and so on. So you can keep all of this information managed. For each seed lot, the system automatically produces a unique code, and then you can track all the data exchange and all information. So this is a very basic tools. So the tools is to keep track of information. You can also use the tools to reconstruct what will be the history of your materials. Then interoperability, it will be very important, because if you are a smaller organization, you can use tools like this, but if you are a larger organization, you already have your data. So we are working on interoperability to define what will be the best practice to keep track of the exchange between different organizations. The market can become really complex. There will not be one tool to do it, because there will be, different country requirements on. The idea is to try to discuss how will be facilitate the communication and data flow by all the different tools. So We all know that at this current stage of developing software, like to interacting with local authorities for CAP and all this information, it happens a lot to write again the same data in different software. This is something that we should avoid, and so the traceability by default will be managed. We need to keep track of data exchanged by different organizations, so we need to find a way to do it in the easiest way that you can. So sometimes it's important to find a way. So there will be some, the software needs to communicate. The computer science terms is API, application programming interface. It means that every software can be used by an actual people writing data, but also there will be this API allowing different software to exchange information. And all the software that we are developing inside the LiveSeeding has this possibility, so it will be possible and to be interoperable. And then it will be important to share the same languages and also have a common vocabulary. So are we dealing with the same species? It happens a lot that will be it is also something very basic like a species or a crop. It may be tricky to manage. So we propose a few tools that are not developed inside the project. So we try to avoid to create new things, but to try to reuse what it happens. One of these tools is BRAPI. It is a language, it is a standard that can be used to exchange data by different breeding organizations. It has been really used by a lot of organizations. So we propose to use this format because it's allow you to exchange data between data about germplasm organizations, seed lots, and also phenotyping data between different software. Then we are also evaluating the connection with CPVO plant varieties. It is very important when, are we dealing with the same varieties? So it is important to exchange information with them. We are also evaluating how it will be possible to do it also. What will be the framework on entering OHM inside CPVO database. This is an open topic that will be important. And then at last, there is already a set of tools developed by FAO to manage information about genetic material exchange. It will be possible to, when you have a seed lots, you can register a unique code for that seed lots. It is called DOI, Digital Object Identification. So there is a very easy to do tools. We are testing some interaction with them, and it will be possible because not for all the seed exchange, but for the major seed exchange between different organizations, or when you notify a seed lots, it will be very important to keep track of this code and creating a unique identifier. So a code that is specific to that seed lots and is connected with passport data. It will be an important tool. So this is what we suggest to support the integration. Thank you for your attention. For any question, you can email me.
Thank you, Diego, for a great summary and update on where we are with the traceability tools and the interoperability. So the final speaker today is Sebastian. Sebastian Kussmann works as a plant breeder at an organic breeding organization in Switzerland. And he's also studying for a PhD within the Agroecological Transitions Group at ETH Zurich. And this is around strategies for the diversification of agrobiodiversity and includes research on OHM. So we'll pass to Sebastian for our final presentation before we take a short break. And as I say, there'll be a poll shared in the chat where you can vote on which breakout group you will join after the break. It'd be great if you could indicate that so that we can get those set up during the break. Thank you, everybody. And over to you, Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. And thanks that I can speak here again after the second workshop already. And yeah, I'm presenting today a few first insights into the interviews I did on opportunities and challenges of Organic Heterogeneous Material. And as Charlotte already said, I'm myself a plant breeder. I'm working in grain legume breeding for an organic institution in Switzerland. And I'm doing my PhD beside on this topic of OHM because I'm interested myself or in how can we actually work in breeding on OHM. So the main question is, what are the opportunities and challenges we have to establish OHM development? And if I talk about OHM development, I'm mainly considering breeding of OHM, or like not the parts of the value chain which have been talked about in the previous presentations, but it's really this development process, this initial development process of. And yeah, in the invitation for this workshop today, you already found a link to a survey which is online. And thanks to all of you which already filled in the survey. And I would highly appreciate if other people also fill in this survey. You can also forward this link to people where you think they might be interested. This survey is just to get a general overview of who is working on OHM, and like to get an overview. And I'm doing also in-depth interviews, which are already started, and I already got a few emails or email addresses of people which are available for an in-depth interview about how they are working on OHM, and I will contact everyone who gave me his or her email address within the next 2 months to find a date for a more in-depth. I have here definitions of OHM. I will skip that because I think everyone is aware of what it is. Just to give you a short overview again about the approach I'm using. I presented this already last time. It's the strategic niche management research approach which I'm using, which has the main idea that we need a change. There's a need to change something, in our case in agricultural and food production, on a meta level, which you see here is the socio-technical landscape. And I just wrote one aspect, for example, which is one main aspect of OHM is the need for agrobiodiversity diversification. And then we have those socio-technical regimes, and we have those innovation, which means we have this overall need to increase agrobiodiversity. And then we have those niche innovations, which in our case are projects which started many years ago on working on heterogeneous material, working on farmers' varieties. Everything was about participatory processes, which wanted to diversify agrobiodiversity. And then we have those socio-technical regimes, which you can see here. So we have science, we have culture, we have technology, we have policy, we have industry, and we have market and user preferences. And all those different regimes, they influence how this innovations which have been developed in those niches, composite cross populations, farmers' varieties, organic heterogeneous materials, how those innovations can actually be upscaled and leads to a change of those socio-technical regimes. And that's what I'm looking into. So I'm looking into those different levels of those regimes. And I will give you now a few insights from the interviews. I decided that I will just show you a few quotes and give you a little bit of an interpretation what those quotes could stand for if it comes to organic heterogeneous material. I won't show any numbers today because this survey is still going on. So I will just highlight a few impressions I have so far from the interviews about how OHM can develop. So if it comes to science, the market, and culture and ideas how to utilize OHM, then we see that there's quite some diversity. Everything, all the bullet points here are actually quotations now from interviews or from comments people made in the survey. So from an agronomic point of view, people want to use, or actors want to use OHM for adaptation to specific local agroecological conditions, but also for agrobiodiversity conservation. And like as said here, to observe forgotten accessions, but also to make use of forgotten accessions, to mix them into diverse populations, to bring kind of ancient material back into practice. Then an interesting aspect also for the breeding agronomically is that there is less, that there's the selective ability of the environment. So there is like an interaction between the breeder and the environment. Then also to work on intercropping, crop-wide relatives. And what I found an interesting aspect is to say that we can develop more cultivars in shorter time, especially in comparison to uniform varieties. So if we see what are the motivations or how to utilize OHM on an agronomic level, they're quite diverse. If it comes to, then if we go to a legal economic level, then of course, what is kind of the heart of OHM is that there is a legal space for non-DOS material. But what you also see is that many people mentioned that it's especially for decentralized seed work, and it gives opportunity for people which are operating only on a very small level and which are not specialized in plant breeding. So there was like not just one person said it's like we are just a limited number of people. We do not working on our farm or working in our and that we also market something we are working on. But there was also risk mentioned if it comes to legal issues, or this risk that there is a risk that this category of OHM is misused to actually notify cultivars which are not OHM, which do not fulfill the definition of OHM, but are anyway registered. And that then also low quality seeds are brought on the market because of the, that there is, for example, the germination rate is too low, and this will damage the image of OHM. And what I found interesting is that many people also especially mentioned those cultural aspects, that there is a, you can add a cultural, an organic food system, and you can pay more attention to qualities like taste, and also this more holistic perspective you can involve in OHM, so that you can include citizens and authorities to think more about holistic changes of the food system. A little bit to sum up what I what I found in those interviews is that I see the tendency that we see two scientific or cultural narratives if it comes to OHM. So one is more in the tradition of the recognition and the support of farmers' seed systems. So recognizing farmers' innovations and the dynamic management of agrobiodiversity on farm, and recognizing the farmers also as seed producers, and that OHM gives the possibility to make cultivars available and to bring them on the market. And there is more this qualitative, it's this qualitative increase of diversity is crucial and needed as an easy notification process and easy seed production and marketing. While on the other hand, we have this more scientific perspective on increasing agrobiodiversity for more sustainability, where the idea is to, on a large scale, develop OHM with new breeding methods to have an overall increase of agricultural biodiversity, and to make also, to have more benefits of this diversification of crop production, especially if it comes to pests and diseases and those factors. So we have, those kind of two narratives, which also include different actors. While the first one is especially this local networks working on farm-safe seeds and farmers-bred cultivars. The other one requires more the involvement also of seed companies, and also to adapt classical breeding approaches for the development of OHM. So how can I, for example, shift from a more pure line breeding program to a OHM breeding program, or how can I combine that? If it comes to the current situation, the notification, like the policy and the market notification process, the answers are super diverse. So I got replies from people which already registered OHM, which said it's easy, there are no problems, it's a really smooth process with the notification, while others said that the protocols they get from these public agencies are unclear, and the public agencies, they're not promoting OHM at all. Others say we do not even have a procedure now, an official for the notification. Then there are also like legal uncertainties. For example, some institutions developed OHM but are not themselves able to produce organic certified seeds. So there is a question how this can be organized. Yeah. So it's quite diverse, and it seems that this implementation of the notification process is quite case and country specific. Then the question we already discussed last time is about intellectual property rights. There we also see kind of opposing views, or we have different opinions about intellectual property rights, because some people say that it is hard for a breeding company, and here we are talking now about like larger breeding companies, to change the business model in order to work with OHM, because intellectual property rights are not there. Those medium or large scale companies won't start working on OHM. And there's like this kind of some people, I say, would refer this only to economic reasons. So because the intellectual property rights, they guarantee that there is a return of investment for large breeding companies for the breeding activities, while others says it's also a question of mentality, because we have proven that diversification can lead to more resilience of agricultural production, but because of cultural reasons, those companies or those institutions, they stick to the development of pure lines. And then on the other hand, we have this fear also that it's not just that larger seed companies or will not start developing OHM, but also that the missing legal protection has the risk that they're stealing from OHM, which were developed by actors like farmers or local initiatives. If they bring OHM to the market, that they can further select from those OHM for their own variety development. So there are kind of fears from both sides. Then another question is like, what does it need actually if it comes to breeding of OHM and developing of OHM? And there I would say we also have kind of two groups. And one is the group which is already working with a lot of diversity. So it's more small scale activities or like regional activities, which are used to working with heterogeneous populations, selecting in different environments. And then for them, it seems to be easy to fit into this OHM category. While we see, if it comes to, as I mentioned before already, institutions which are working on pure line breeding at the moment, there's skills missing, and there's also competence missing in how to deal with this complexity of plant diversity in the breeding process. So how can I actually make use of the material I already have? Let's imagine there's an institution breeding for pure line varieties, but they have all those diverse populations and early generations. So there's a lack of skills or breeding approaches which actually combine those different activities. So how can I use the same populations, for example, to go on developing OHM, and also for pure lines, what kind of testing can I use? How do I organize the selection process? So there's, for those medium-sized breeding, there's a fear that this will be a lot of additional effort, a lot of more field trials, more seeds which needs to be handled, and they lack a little bit proposals how this can be combined in an efficient way. Yeah, I think that's it from my side for now. I'm looking forward to discuss with you how we can promote upscale establishment of OHM, and I would specifically would like to discuss with you like what is needed from breeding research in order to motivate people to start developing OHM. What kind of research could be interesting? What kind of tools? And here again the link also to the survey. If anyone is here which hasn't filled in the survey yet, I'm super happy to if you do that. And also if you would be available for an interview, feel free to write me an email. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. It's really great to see that synthesis already beginning and starting to highlight some of the priorities for our network and our group into the future of where those gaps are in wider adoption of OHM.